Listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Public Beta Testing, HIT, Human Interaction Testing with Seth Okai. My name is Dara and I will be your webinar moderator today. Before I hand you over to Seth, I would like to bring a few things to your attention. Seth will present for approximately 30 minutes and we'll have a Q&A session directly after. If you have a question for Seth, just type them into the questions box on your control panel and I will address the questions to Seth at the end of the webinar. The slides, the webinar will be recorded and emailed to you when it is available. As for the slides, we will email these to you as well as place them on the EuroSTAR blog. Feel free to join in the conversation on Twitter during and after the webinar by using the EuroSTAR hashtag, this hashtag ESConf. And you can also find today's presenter, Seth, on Twitter at NBSBeta. And now, without further delay, I would like to welcome Seth as today's webinar presenter. Good afternoon, Seth.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the attendees as well. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so I'm just going to do some very brief housekeeping first. I'm just going to make sure that you can see everything that you need to be seeing and that it all runs smoothly as well. So what we're going to do today, just to let you know, from EuroSTAR, that was my first EuroSTAR conference that I went to, and just as a very short recap, because I had a lot of feedback after the session, so thank you for coming to see me, speak to me, engage with me in conversation about beta itself. So really, just what we're going to do now is the next couple of slides is just to get you settled in, get me settled in, and also check out the technology and make sure that's working correctly. So hopefully you should be able to see what's on screen now. You may not get any sound through this, but again, this is just a check motion from my slides. Please let Dora know, but if you do have any technical difficulties or if there's any problems with the sound, you let me know as well, and I'll do my best to change that as well.
Everything's working fine there, Seth?
Everything's looking okay.
Looks great.
That's great, thank you for that. Okay, right, at the very end of the last session, what we actually did is we looked at a test case, you could say. Now, what you'll find is my style of presentation is slightly odd to some, and that's because I use real-world cases, I use things that I see in everyday life, I even use a lot of film and television for actual looking at test cases. So at the end of the last session, the main point is what can we actually learn from the empire as far as producing products? The main outcome is that regardless of how strong, how powerful your product is, without thorough testing, call in as many people as you can to test for vulnerabilities at every possible stage of design. Without that, the smallest thing that may actually be overlooked could be the undoing of your product. Now, any vulnerabilities the further on, especially closer to launch or closer to implementation of your product, service or software, is much more difficult to track down and eliminate, especially without causing major risk at the end of that time. So as I said, the smallest weakness that is overlooked or thought it's insignificant can unfortunately unravel all your good work. So before we start the session, and without further ado, as they say, I'm going to start over again and see how far we can get with beta testing with you. Okay, so the name of the session is Human Interaction Testing. The main reason why I've selected this title is part of my role is to work with customers, work with clients, work with internal staff with regard to improving the way we develop our products. And because of that, all of this information gets fed back into development, and obviously that's the way we actually move forward and progress this. Now, one of the things that came from the conference the last time, and again discussion with yourselves, was that when you're in a test environment, we have quite strict rules. The reason why we have these strict rules is so we can recreate time and time again test scenarios. We can put a product through its paces each time or each iteration that we have a build and make sure that it's scripted, we have a logical approach, and that we can identify any problems that were seen before and in the existing version. Where I come in is adding that human element to it. So where we have these kind of strict governing kind of rules to make sure the test environment is secure and works, what often happens is you give your product to an end user and they use it in a way that you could never have imagined before. They'll approach it in different ways. And a lot of the time, the reason why they approach it in a different way is because of human behavior. So all the things that we control in one environment, they don't have those same controls. So what the session is it's going to take you through a startup process about how you can actually implement beta testing, how you can win approval, and what's more important, the actual getting started part with minimal cost and impact, but to prove results as well. So as we go through the session, like I say, please submit as many questions as you can, talking points, get us after the conference, because what we're going to do is my methodology based on beta is about building for your target audience. So in keeping with that, that's exactly what I've done today. Just to give you an idea, if you have internal customers, so your customer being your internal staff, if you develop software for them, if you develop for a client, or if you develop for a market or customer base, that is your audience. And so if you're actually expecting them to be involved in your product, to buy your product or services, it makes perfect sense to also include them in the development of that. That way you know that it's going to be fit for purpose for your end user when it goes to launch. And if you can include them at every possible stage of development, it means that you make for a much more robust product from a much earlier stage. So that is the basics of my methodology. Now, just to let you know, first off, credit's got to go to EuroSTAR attendees. It was your questions and conversation from the session on beta testing that inspired me to create this session now. So again, in true keeping of that, I will take your feedback from this session to develop further material. Okay, let's get started. Just as a general overview, when we're talking about observations, one of the guys in the office was wearing a hat. And the hat seemed, cover his eyes quite large. And it got me thinking about things. I asked to borrow it, and if you can see just underneath that middle section, it says one size fits all. So to actually take from that information, one size won't fit all. What I'm going to try and do in this session is to cover as many of the basics up to some of the more advanced implementation methods for beta testing and ask you to take from it what you can. Everybody's going to be different. If you're from something like medical instruments profession or you're from the gaming industry, the way you approach beta testing is going to be difficult or different, I should say, for you all depending on the circumstances. So what we're going to do is give you as many hints and tips as you can, and obviously if you'd like to then for me to elaborate on those, that's what we'll do with further information as well. So it's quite clear that one size doesn't fit all. And we should also apply this to our end user base and customers. They're going to vary in ability, in approach to the software, environment. And all of these will have impact on how they use the software and the results of their testing. Okay. Right, I'm hoping quite a few of you would have already seen something similar to this. So just to walk you through this, when we're talking about projects and software implementation and development, I'm sure all of you can either identify with this scenario or definitely know of an organization, perhaps a company, who's actually conformed or who've fallen into this trap. So this is what we're here to actually address and avoid by use of public or beta testing. So just to walk you through this quickly. This is what the customer said they needed when you've done your research. This is often what the project leader wanted to produce based on that research. This is often the elements which design corrected in those storyboards or requirements. Try not to fall foul of the quick wins. Quick wins have always got to be calculated. You have to make sure that people are getting value from the developments that you're making, rather than putting something in just that's easy to do. Marketing and sales. Make sure that they also have input into the development to make sure they're getting their messages correct. And unfortunately, my part, it was so sad to hear that a lot of you have been trying to implement beta testing, but for one reason or another, it hasn't actually taken place. Now, this traditionally is maybe the stage where beta testing takes place, pretty much when the product is ready, just before initial launch, and again, just to reduce that end user risk or impact when it goes live. What I want to try and demonstrate today is that testing, public testing, evaluation and validation should happen at every possible stage, from idea conception through to initial designs, the requirements, storyboarding, initial prototyping, and right the way through to launch and post-launch. So I'm sure we've all seen this before happen to some companies. The feature that managed to miss the deadline. All of the different ideas that were being talked about within software development, and the one key feature that was needed got missed. Ideas all ready for what the next version is going to be, without actually completing work in evaluation and feedback and development on the existing version. Often, what was ready for launch when it was ready, and what the customer should have got. So this is what we're here to avoid. Okay, so let's get started. The next section is going to cover a range of topics, guides and also contracts, media that you can actually use, and again, low cost, getting started, up and running, and incentives. So first off, one of the most important things, and something that was talked about quite heavily at the conference, was how do you actually begin? So before we start looking at the actual software development, we look at the stages. Before we start actually looking at users that you're going to actually approach for beta testing, one of the fundamental things to have a plan about is either your guidance or contracts that you may require. So one of the most important things is to distinguish between guidance and also contracts as far as responsibility goes. So just going to show you a little caption there as to making sure what you're tied into and what counts as guidance. I've included a link there, and you'll find this also in a set of links at the end of the slides. For those in the UK and in Europe, this may be of help. This is about intellectual property, and it discusses non-disclosure agreements. And what's good about this is it's almost a startup guide. So how do you get these things in place? So let's just talk about a couple of different things and aspects of where this comes in handy. Guidance for producing an NDA. So this is a non-disclosure agreement. Now, a non-disclosure agreement comes in very handy, especially if you're prototyping, if you're going up against competition, if you're trying to protect your intellectual property. And where an NDA comes in handy is making sure that you've got that baseline set of agreements in place. Once you've done that, if you're presenting a business case to your company for testing, this is going to make them a lot happier than if you don't have one, or at least a plan for one. It's easy to do. check out the guidance on the website. And also, if you have a legal team, or you can consult a lawyer, solicitor, just to run you through the basics of what you may have and what you may wish to protect. This will also go towards helping get started there. Points to consider. One way. If it's a case where when you're beta testing, all you simply want to happen is to be able to issue software in test form or design form to a user group and allow them to test it, but not to be able to either transmit, recreate, copy, or broadcast their activity that they've been involved in, then a one-way agreement is absolutely fine. For some of you who may be working in consultancy, where perhaps you're consulting for a test firm, if you're providing a testing service, or where part of your remit is to understand how your end user actually works in their environment, then a two-way non-disclosure agreement, again, would possibly be the route to take. This means not only are your developments protected, but it also protects your user group, knowing that you won't then go on to discuss perhaps who they're working with in the industry, who they're in direct competition with, who they're going to tender business from. And again, by establishing that understanding and that relationship at the beginning, means that you're going to have dedicated testers who aren't worried about what's going to happen with the information that you share between you. And of course, the guide also contains close examples. So nice and easy to get started. There's some literature in there that you can actually use, that you can tweak to fit your business needs, and actually get up and running with that straight away at very little cost. Okay, so moving on, what we're going to look at is incentives. Now, there's a couple of things that we can do here. When we're talking about people doing testing for us, rewards can come in many shapes and forms. Now, a lot of the time when we look at beta testing, especially in the games industry or the wider, you could be looking at things like free subscriptions, discounts to the product on launch, trial periods of use, and even prizes. Now, all this is good and well, and when you get started, this is an excellent way to actually get that going, to make that kind of that gift, that nice little pretty ribbon, which is going to entice testers to come and test your software. There's a few things to be wary of, though. If you're a small company, it's probably nothing much that you need to worry about or look into. But what's important is that in 2010, the Bribery Act was introduced into the UK. So if you're primarily working in the UK or dealing with UK businesses, you need to understand the current legislation and law with regard to not so much hosting. Hosting is being not covered in the guide. That's still okay to do within reason. But as far as gifting, payment for services or anything else, the guide gives you some excellent outlines as to what you should be doing and what you should be wearing off. And like anything else, if you can demonstrate that you are aware of these considerations, then again, it makes for a much stronger environment, especially if you're trying to win this as a business case for beta testing within your company. So what can we also produce for little to no cost at all? The likes of digital badges. This is something which is quite often used, again, in quite a lot of the industry, where you can actually provide somebody with a digital image to say they are part of a testing group for your product or for your company. And as little and simple as it sounds, this is something, again, which gives people a sense of value, a sense of belonging, a sense of community. They're part of something, and it's also almost like a badge of honor. They can wear that to actually demonstrate to their colleagues and other businesses that they're actually used as consultants or testers for another company's products. Mentions and test updates. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail shortly, but one of the important things is always that you refer back to your testers and what they've provided for you. So again, even if this is internal staff, keep them up to date, mention them in updates. If they've done something well, put it in there. And what it means is they're more likely to continue that test for you for little to no cost. Things like forum icons. Many people actually use this. When I was speaking at the conference, a lot of them were talking about ideas like this. Simple things like actually showing somebody that they're a contributor after a certain amount of help that they've given, a certain amount of test information that they've provided, bugs or issue submittal. And you can actually either change their rank, change their badges and icons as you go through. It's all little things that can be done for little to no money, but it actually does give that sense of community there. Selection for your next beta. Open invites as a reward. Reward them with further information or further opportunities to get involved with your products and services even more. Kudos and bragging rights. Again, this is something actually which is quite important to do. If you think about issue submittal, one of the questions that came up is how do you make sure that you're constantly producing quality issue submittals? If you're offering kind of incentives, unfortunately, it's human nature to make sure you try and pull apart everything that's possible. You've got grammatical errors, full stops are being submitted, which is fine, but what you want is good quality issues being submitted. So again, given credit where credit's due for perhaps the number of Cat 1s which has been identified or quality issue submittal. Okay, how do you communicate with your test group? Again, very, very simple things to do here, but have an engagement strategy. You must think in your initial planning how you're actually going to manage this interaction between you and your test group. So you've got all the traditional methods, email, telephone, face-to-face. Traditionally, these are excellent ways of communicating and actually get information to and from your test group in real time and very, very quickly. The problem is they are quite highly resourced. If you can imagine trying to get out there and see your entire test group, or if you're holding test events and you're there, observation sessions, this is the kind of thing which needs to be resourced and can be quite heavy on, obviously, your time as well. So moving into the digital age, how can we actually alleviate that? How can we make things simpler? So we're doing it right now. You feed back via websites already. You've got live chat. Some of you may have been doing this already and sending messages through and questions. Submit via the software. Now this is an excellent use if you think of things like your error reporting and so on, by putting in links which are specifically attached to your beta test environment so people can submit queries or issues that they have from within your software. But obviously this in itself may impact on development. This is something that has to be planned in and designed into your beta product. Social media, so blogging, forums, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all things which have got almost no cost, and you can begin to build your beta environment and have that community and that communication going. Okay, so looking at public beta, starting small, this is the key aspect. Now there's one thing, you may have heard terminology like closed and open beta. So again, this is a bit of a broad brush. For those new to beta testing, closed beta, rather than just necessarily concentrating on small groups, more talks about the responsibilities of your end user. So the easiest way to remember it is small and controlled, but I'll give you an exception to the rule shortly. So where this comes important, what you also have is the expansion of your beta test environment. I wish you every success, and hopefully you will go on from small group, if it suits your needs, to a much larger environment. This in itself comes not with necessary risk, but higher considerations when you're dealing with much more people. So what this tends to be is open beta. This is when your product is pretty much ready, it's complete, it's about to be launched, it's ready to go to market, where you may give advanced screenings to a much wider audience. to gain feedback at that last minute. So let's look at the two in a little bit of detail. So closed beta, where can you actually use this? Internal staff is perfect. In your test environment, do you just have your test team? Is it the developers that test for you? What about others who are working around you or use the systems that you're creating for them? If you're producing for the stakeholders and project groups or outside clients, are they involved? Have they seen designs? Have they been involved in the actual development and the use of the product you're creating for them? Small groups, tight. And what you can also do is control this as far as the information flow. So remember, back to contracts, this is an ideal way to start. Where there's an, you could say, I wouldn't say exempt, but a difference in this is a lot of you may remember back to Google when they did Gmail. Now, Gmail actually started out as a beta, and whether it was a joke or not, was on April 1st in 2004. And many of you may remember that Gmail was in beta for what seemed to be a bit, I can't even, I think it was about 3-4 years perhaps, but it seemed to be perpetual. Now, what they actually did was had a closed beta environment where it was by invitation only. You could only get a Gmail account if you'd been invited. And this almost worked like a viral way of testing. To expand that closed beta, you had to invite somebody else. So you're pretty sure when this started out that all of the people who were involved were connected in some way, shape or form. So some of you may remember you would get one invite if you were on the beta for long enough. If you continued and you referred other people, you would have more invites. These are all concepts that you can use. Close group, extended group by invitation only and moving forward. It's a very useful way. So open beta, much wider group. Not only is it a wider group, but what you're actually looking for is different abilities. What these people actually bring to software use, how they approach it. And because they're all different, because they may all approach your software in a different way, what you actually get is different results from your testing. Things that perhaps you couldn't have foreseen in an internal environment. Things that unfortunately, when they go to launch and they're out there in the open, maybe there's environments, maybe there's things to do with proxy servers, maybe there's installation issues, where if people have got a particular setup, especially if it's very tight security, your software may act differently. All of this is valuable information that you can gain through beta testing. Where this may be bias is that with closed beta, especially if you're looking at your internal environment and project teams, is they want to know what their return on investment is going to be. Not just from the software itself, but also from the test environment. From an end user point of view, or open beta, this is their money they're spending. So this affects the value they place on your product. So by juggling or balancing between these two types of group, you can actually find that balance. And there's no reason at all why you can't actually communicate prices to your end users. See what they think. What would they expect to pay for new features that come in? How much would they expect to invest in your product? If you have that relationship, they will give you that information. So okay, moving on to tools. What this illustrates is, so far, we're going to look at very simplistic tools to get started, because I don't want you to be spending thousands and thousands trying to implement something at startup. This is all things that will help to go towards your business case. So as well as the very advanced technologies which are out there for use in the test environment, never forget the simple things that you have. You've got some of the best testing and recording kit right there on you. Eyes and ears. Remember, some of the simple technologies are sometimes the most powerful. So let's have a look at things which are low cost, will help win approval and get set up. Web seminars. We're using one right now. This is something where you can have a test group, interact with them there and then, showcase your product, get instant feedback, and depending on the type of system you're using, even hand over control to testers within that test group to navigate your prototypes. Now again, for the likes of systems like this, the reason why this is quite important and very useful is because if you're broadcasting something which is on a development box that you have, it wouldn't be feasible necessarily to allow outside access to your network, to breach your security, to test in your test environment. So broadcast it to them and get feedback. Screenshots, early stage designs, prototyping, one of the best uses. We expect this and we applaud testers who submit issues with screenshots to help tell that story. Do the same to your test group. PowerPoints. Use PowerPoint as a weapon. Mock up your screenshots, mock up your design flats, make them look like a usable system, and have your end users and your testers navigate that. They may spot things in the storyboard that just looking at them alone didn't highlight. Grab a laptop. Never forget, face-to-face. If you can deploy it on your laptop, get it on there, get out, and start speaking to people. Invite them in, have test sessions. And if you can deploy it in their environment, do it. And remember that guidance covers you and your testers. Once you pass that stage, if you have the funds to do so, I would highly recommend in a dedicated server for your test environment. This way you can sit this box on an external line, completely isolated from your internal network, deploy your software to it, and have your testers connect and use it. And again, remember to showcase all of the hard work that you do in the testing and development environment. Make sure you show this off, not just to the stakeholders, not just to the end users and the clients, to as many people as you can. Just to give you an idea, the guy that you're seeing at the bottom here, BlendTech, simple, they make blenders. But what they will do is get the newest pieces of technology that they can, and they will literally drop them into their blenders. It's almost like a live test. Okay, that's a little bit of an extreme example, but hopefully you can take some ideas away from that as to what you may be able to implement. So, recording the results. All of this information that you get back, all of this interaction that you have with your testers, what you need to try and do is minimize the amount of either duplication or work that you have to put in after things like issues are submitted. So if somebody sends you emails, if it's telephone calls, if it's in writing, you're going to have to actually go through, vet it, moderate it, put it into a usable format, and then submit it to your system. The more you can eliminate that, the easier it will be. Remember, not everybody's a protester like you may be. So on to the next section. Very quickly, we're going to enlist the divine wisdom of the Ghostbusters here for a practical example on issue submission. Bug reports form the core of a testing effort. I'm going to elaborate on this as we go through. This is information. Give each bug a clear and concise title. Include a brief summary that all can understand. What this is this is information for your test group on issue submittal. One of the questions that came up at the conference is how do we make sure that your end users, especially the public, know how to submit quality issues. If they're not testers, how do you do this? It's simple. Instruction. Tell them, either make it fun, if it's a business environment, use an approach which isn't necessarily technical to them, but in the environment they understand, so they can actually recreate what you have as far as a submittal form. They don't have to know that's exactly how you use it, but if it's in the same format, it means literally you can put it straight into your systems with very little reworking. Note the expected results. And of course, the actual. This is a massive difference, but this is really important for your test group to know. 1 book per submission, and include the minimum steps to recreate. Again, this is all bread and butter stuff for us, but a brand new end user or tester of your software may not be familiar with this. Offer help. Thank them for the work they've done, and report back on what the next steps are. So to put that in context, what I'm actually going to show you is one of the ideas that one of the guys here came up with. So this is from Andy Fowler, one of our guys in the QA team. Now, in order to improve bug submission with our internal staff, people that we have to test, he decided to actually put this guide on the inside of the cubicle doors. This isn't going to work for everybody. This may be a bit way out there for some of you. But think about how you can actually engage your test group. What's going to work for them? What is going to make them sit up and learn? And again, this was recreated for my beta testers. So okay, it's not on the toilet door, but this simple guide is actually on the issue submission form that our external testers can now use via our website. It's got all the same information in, it's got all the guidance, what makes a good bug submittal, and obviously what the bug classifications are. So looking at feedback, just to wrap up, we all do reports to QA about the development, the project teams, the stakeholders, and so on. But what about your testers? Make sure that you inform them. You're on the case. Let them know what's going to happen with their issue. Is it a bug? Is it something which, okay, it'd be nice, we'll put it down for future development. We'll look into it. Tell them if you fixed something. They've definitely told you if something doesn't work, let them know when it's fixed. And if you can't resolve something, let them know that you still haven't forgotten about it. This is all the interaction part. It's reinforcing their value and keeping them engaged. Send them updates. You can do it per test cycle, or quarterly, or even an annual update. Let them know how many bugs have been found over the years, how many have been raised by beta testers like themselves, how many things have changed based on the issues they've raised. Don't leave it to your testers to think, yeah, I've done a good job. Tell them, it's human nature. We all want to find value in what we do. It spurs us on to do more and to do it better. Appreciation is a noun. It denotes the just valuation or recognition of worth. Nice little quote there. Okay, up next, you spent all this time and effort. You've now got yourself a beta test environment up and running. Make sure you use the information you get back. Wealth of information coming in. Make sure you do something with it. Remember that what one group finds enticing or enjoyable to use, another may not. Where possible, and we've used this approach here, think about your end users. So you may have seen websites, it's probably easiest to do with websites, where you've got new and a classic view. You're supporting a brand new way of thinking, a brand new approach to your software, but you're not forgetting the ones who've used it, tried and tested, used it for years, and are happy it's efficient the way it works for them. Have both if you can. Okay, quickly running through to wrap up. PR and pitfalls. Where this comes in. Negative comments, positive comments. How you can handle that and how you can handle that information from your test group, public, and so on. I've actually put negativity at the top because this is actually very important to me. What you get out of negativity is active testers. We're at the most demanding that we've ever been as far as consumers. We want the products and services, we want the quality from them. If we don't, we let the people know. We've all done it. So because of that, you will tend to get much more information from negative users than perhaps you do from the positive. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where when you're really happy with a product or service, you tend not to ring the people up who developed it, who designed it, and say, you know what, you're doing a great job. Constant feedback, future development, anything which is negative can go into the pot as to where you can possibly go with your product. Enhancing it, bug fixes, competitor research. What we'll do is quite often, if you're in competition with another product, is tell you what the other product does that yours doesn't. This is all for free. This is all information that you'll get. Consultant. I had a young lady ask me a question at the conference regarding what happens if somebody is going to migrate from your product to a competitor. What happens if you can't stop them from leaving? If they've got a service that they can get from elsewhere, ask them if they want to be consultants for you. As in a beta tester, let them tell you what it is that another service provides. By doing that, what you're doing is gaining information not only on your competitor, but a chance to actually win them back should your development go into a similar vein. Innovation. Innovation always springs from trying to make something easier, more efficient, and work better. So all these negative aspects use to your advantage. Positivity. Test gurus. Let them be experts for you. Let them help others within your test group. Testimonials. This is all part of showing off and showcasing your designs, your developments, and your testing. Quotes. Endorsement. All excellent from your end user group as far as a PR exercise. And media and literature. If you've got websites, blogs, any kind of media which goes out, include that information on it. And if they say keep it, don't change it, that's a pat on the back for you. Remember, one of the biggest things is not just to identify where things could be made better or where things are going wrong. It's just as important to identify when you're doing something right. The story that I use at EuroSTAR very quickly is that a very popular suite of products for, you could say, word processing went through a drastic change between its 2003 edition and its 2007. Everybody knew where they were with the menus, using the functions within it. And although the change was, by design, much better perhaps, those who were used to using the system couldn't fathom it. They didn't like it. If you're doing something right, use that as a business case within your own environment to make sure it doesn't change, or you keep it as close to the way your end users like it as possible. Okay, and what happens if the majority is happy and it only seems to be very few who are unhappy? Look into it. Never ignore it. Use it and try to judge if there's something like an ability or an accessibility gap. What actually happened to us internally a while ago is a product which had fields that you could enter information into, working through and entering in data. One particular user, who was a member of staff, could not get any information into the field. Every time they clicked on it, it would deselect, and we could not for the life of us work out why. Every time one of us used it, it worked fine, and you could enter data in. Every time we hand it over, it failed. What actually happened is they were just holding onto the mouse button for about a quarter of a second too long, and it was actually deselecting the box. Human nature is when something goes wrong or where something doesn't work, you click on it longer. You click on it even harder, as if sheer will alone will make the link work. And that's all it was. By actually realizing it didn't work, she was taking even longer to press the mouse button, and that compounded the issue. That never would have been found with the difference of abilities being used. Okay, so finishing up, PR. Make sure that you remain, as a tester, impartial. PR is an excellent byproduct of what you do. Never use it as your primary goal to get the information. Remain impartial, bring quality feedback back to development. Never make a PR exercise off-putting. Use real-world results. That is your primary goal. I just see we're coming up to the hour, so I'm going to try and do a very quick run through now and then hand over to questions. Please keep all questions coming in, all subjects, anything that you want to actually know about as well, and obviously any other information I will produce based on the feedback that you're submitting today. So okay, let's do some takeout. Just a summary of the day, what we should actually have. Getting started. Get together your guide. Is it going to be a guide as to responsibilities and how you're going to deploy, how you're going to test? Is it going to be an agreement, non-disclosures for your test group? Closed beta, open beta. Start small. So if you're new to beta testing, start the small group, win your business case, and move on to expansion. Stay low cost. Get quick results from it. Listen and respond. Key. All about the feedback. Negativity. Make it work for you. And on to the final things, the nice parts. Positivity. You get good commendations, if you get quotes, use it. Show off what you do. And show off the fact that you're working with your user group as well. And use a force. Observe that human behavior. The stuff that we try to limit in a test environment, embrace it from your beta testers. I'll leave you with these two final statements.
Thank you very much for that very informative presentation.
And thank you. Back over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Seth, for that very informative presentation. And so now let's open the floor to any questions that you might have. If you want to ask any questions to Seth, just type them into the questions box and I'll ask these questions to Seth directly. So we have a question here already, and it comes from a Lee Chambers. And the question is, what scenarios would you opt for closed versus open beta testing?
Okay, as I said earlier, I would prefer beta testing in the ideal world to take part at every possible stage. What I would consider is, again, if you look at your market, if you look at competition, if you're doing something which is literally design concept, if it's a first thought and you're going to prototype it as an idea, this is something that you may wish to do as a closed beta. Now, whether this is family and friends, work colleagues, people within your office, that is what I would remain as closed beta. What you're saying effectively is I'm not ready to share this with the rest of the world or the wider group yet, until perhaps you have certain other stages in place. That, I would say, is ideal for a closed beta. Moving on to open beta, exactly the same. Once you're happy with it, if there is no competition, if you're wanting to showcase your developments, move to a wider group. Also, open beta can be used with much larger numbers as well. But again, just remember those details earlier on for control in that environment.
We have a question here from Hermachandra Irgoda. How can we use beta testing and acceptance testing?
Yeah, something that we do, if we think of user acceptance testing as being something, again, not necessarily quite late on, but when you've got a tangible or functioning product, beta testing should take place alongside that. What we actually do internally here is literally when a build comes to QA and they've checked it over, and obviously there's not going to be any major issues which is going to affect the experience for a beta tester. In tandem to that, this same build may be deployed to the beta test server. And this is for people to connect to and actually use that. So as part of acceptance testing, there's no reason at all why your test group shouldn't be involved in that the same way as your internal test group do.
The next question I have here is from Pedrig Skokovic. Do you find internal protesters as good start to introduce beta testing as concept in a company?
Yeah. Sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Yeah, no problem, sorry. The question was, do you find internal protesters as good start to introduce beta testing as concept in a company?
Yeah, if I'm getting that right, is if you come up against resistance internally, either for business case, for project, perhaps it's new function, that maybe you've kind of thought, right, I'm not sure about that, use beta testing, get it to the wider audience, get it to your target market, because they're the first people who are going to tell you if the direction you're taking is right. And the reason why I'd like to integrate beta testing at so many different stages and as early as possible is this is all about eliminating or at least reducing risk. So this is very important. If you have a business case, if it's something that you feel needs reinforcing, your beta testers will do this for you. It's an unfortunate situation that a lot of companies are in where an idea may be squashed, you could say, because it's come from an internal test group. By involving a target market, all of a sudden, the same thing, the very same suggestions, seem to hold so much more weight when it comes to stakeholders and clients.
The next question I have here for you is from Nayani Ranasaya. Can you tell me about exit criteria for beta testing?
Exit criteria, if we're looking at testers themselves, just very, very quickly, what you can do is it's up to you whether you want to hold sections, say, per test cycle, whether you want to have contracted beta testers. So at one point in the past, what we would do is have almost a one-year rolling contract. Say for 12 years, there would be a beta tester, we would sign the agreement. At the end of the year, we would reevaluate it, and we would decide if they continue with test activity, if they choose another product, or if we leave it there. There's various things that you can put in there for exit strategy, but put that as part of your guide. Make it as part of the information that you provide on startup. What I'll do is obviously with things like blogs and further information, I'll get all of this up on there. So again, please, I urge everybody to ask as many questions as possible. Submit them via the blog, by Twitter, any way you can, and obviously I'll base any further information on that.
I think we've time to take just one last question, and this question here will comes from a Rob Felderhoff. How much directions should you give your beta testing for using the product?
Okay, this is a good thing. What I would say is this is kind of a mixture between test script, ad hoc, real world. So what I'd like to do is if If we start from the first one, so let's say you have a very specific area of the product or specific piece of functionality that you need testing. What you don't want is beta testers spending hours and hours navigating the product, going through all different areas which aren't the area of focus. In cases like that, again, it's all down to communication. Have that relationship with the beta testers. Give them guidance. Use test scripts. So the internal QA team here is absolutely amazing at producing test scripts, and they actually also do this for our customer base. Also, not just that, but beta testers will often tell you if you've actually made errors in the process flow of a test script. So they can even be used to enhance your internal processes as well. So very quickly, that's where you want them to focus. Ad hoc is where you literally just want them to, once they've done an area of focus, have a general look around. Might be exactly that, a new UI. Get them to just have a look, have a browse, do whatever. And then finally, which is real world, where what you want them to actually do is use the software as they would as if it was live. So in this environment of, say, architecture and things like that, what we would do is give our beta products to architects who are perhaps on live jobs or who can simulate a live job in our product to see how it stands up to the real world. All this different ways, invaluable to use.
Unfortunately, we don't have any time for any more questions, but I'd like to bring to your attention our webinar archive, where you can find almost 50 recorded webinars available to watch free at any time. You need to be a member of the EuroSTAR community to access these webinars, but membership is free and only takes a few minutes to set up. Membership will also give you access to our ebooks, videos, podcasts, and presentations, as well as email addresses and competitions announcements. I would just like to take this moment to thank Seth for his presentation today, and thank you everyone who attended. The webinar is now over, so have a nice day, and thank you again.
Thank you.